Welcome not just to the BMW 4 Series, but the most thorough BMW 4 Series review on the internet. Because while we get most press cars for a few days or a weekend or a week, for example, I've had this particular 4 Series for 6 whole months. It's been with me through road trips and COVID and runs to the tip and just about everything. For all intents and purposes, it is my car, or at least that's how I think of it.
That means that I've had time to not just get a snapshot of what it's like, but properly get under the skin of it. And this video will be a summary of everything I've learned over the last 6 months. So, if you want a 4 Series, or even if you're just vaguely interested in one, this is worth watching.
Now, this particular generation of 4 Series has had quite a bumpy start in life because some people just don't like the way that it looks, particularly that thing on the front. But while beauty is in the eye of the beholder, there's no doubt that this car is very different looking from its chief rivals, such as the Mercedes-Benz C-Class Coupe, the Audi A5 Coupe, and, if you're being really different, the Lexus RC.
As is usually the case with BMW, there's plenty of engines to choose from. My 4 Series has the 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol, which is the biggest seller in the UK, but you can also have it with 4 and 6-cylinder diesels, as well as some very powerful 3-litre petrols, including the 503 brake horsepower M4 Competition.
Right, let me show you the interior because of course it's going to be the place where you spend most of your time if you own or you're driving a 4 Series. And one of the first things that struck me when I got in this car for the first time, and also as I've been running it over the last few months, is how well judged the whole layout is. Because there's a temptation now with manufacturers to make everything about a big screen and have no physical controls. It's different in this. You've still got the screens, you've got the digital dash in front of you, and you've got the central infotainment screen, which I'll talk about in a second, but you've also got plenty of physical controls, including the climate control buttons down here and shortcut buttons for the radio and other functions. And it just means that this car isn't intimidating to get into and work out all its different functions. And once you have worked it out, they're all just a press of a button away. It's really simple to use. A particular highlight is this rotary dial on the center console, and although it doesn't look like much, it does make a big difference because although the central screen is a touch screen, which is very useful when you're sitting in stationary traffic or the car is parked, when you're on the move, it's a lot easier to use the rotary dial because it's a lot more precise and it's less distracting. Now, for some reason, Mercedes-Benz and Audi have both got rid of their rotary dial functionality on the center console, and BMW are one of the only ones that still retains it, and I think that's a really good touch, and I've enjoyed using it a lot over the last few months. Quality also really stands out in here because although there are some cheaper plastics on show, such as down here and down here, they're not complete bargain basement plastics, and they are actually not the kind of things that you're touching all the time. The main touch points are really impressive because the buttons are nicely damped, you've got this nicely trimmed steering wheel. As I said, the rotary dial is a pleasure to use, and also the seat belts have got nice little touches such as this M colour stitching on it as well. It just makes the car a nice pleasant place to sit. What I would say though, through experience, is that this piano black interior effect, so we've got it here, a bit there and a bit there up there as well, it's an extra £500. And honestly, don't go for it. Go for the aluminium tetragon or aluminium mesh effect, both of which are no-cost options, and they don't scratch as easily as this does, or take fingerprints as easily as well. Moving on to the technology that's fitted to this car, and because there's lots of different options that BMW have kindly put on it, there's a lot to talk about. And actually, if you want to know more about which options I'd go for and which ones I'd leave behind, there's a video in the top right hand corner now where I go into more depth on that. But to give you an overview, I've got the M Sport spec with the M Sport Pro package, the Technology Plus package, and the Comfort Plus package. Standard on all 4 Series though, and this is a really good thing, it's the BMW Live Cockpit Professional Media Infotainment System, and that includes things like this 10.25-inch central infotainment screen. It also includes remote software upgrades. It includes BMW's intelligent personal assistant, which is kind of like Siri, but in the BMW, of course. And honestly, this functions as the car's nerve center. It's where everything goes on, and there couldn't be a better place for it. Everything on here operates with the speed of an iPhone, whether you're using the rotary dial or whether you're using the touchscreen. It's super responsive. It's fully compatible with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and I've also got the Apple CarPlay wirelessly working with this as well. Again, I've had problems with that on some cars. It's been flawless in this. It's never crashed. It's always been absolutely seamless. And not only is it a joy to use, but it also has a huge amount of functionality. I mean, you've got the web in here. You can go on the internet. You can view all the different parking cameras. You've got the media. You've got the inbuilt satellite navigation, which has got the 3D maps. It's got live traffic. I mean, the list is completely endless. I think if we're being super fussy, and I have to be here, it hasn't got some of the fancy, clever, standout, showpiece graphics that, say, the Mercedes-Benz or the new Mercedes-Benz C-Class has got. It's not quite up to that level. It prefers to be simpler and more straightforward. But for ease of use, this and the Audi are the best infotainment systems around. I really believe that. Something else that's included in the standard Live Cockpit Professional package is this 12.3-inch digital dashboard display, which replaces the regular dials in front of you, and it's all just one big screen. And I've got to say, again, when I first got the 4 Series, I was always a bit on the fence about these BMW digital dash, because there's not the same amount of functionality as you get in a Mercedes or Audi's virtual cockpit, and I didn't think it looked as good either. And it's true that you don't have that functionality. It's a very limited amount of things that you can do with it, and if you, say, for example, want to view the map in the middle, it's nowhere near as detailed as what you get on Rivals. It just kind of looks like a collection of lines, and it doesn't really assist that much when you're driving along. But having lived with it now for a few months, I've got to credit it on how clear it is and how it doesn't provide any kind of distraction. Because while a lot of people will probably want that functionality that you get from Mercedes-Benz and you get from Audi, this replaces traditional dials more closely. It still gives you that uncluttered, really clear design where you can see the speed, you can see the revs, the fuel, the temperature gauges, and perhaps what's playing on the radio. This has that covered. What else? The Harman Kardon optional surround sound system is fantastic. It is one of the best speaker systems I reckon you can get in a car around this price point. The head-up display, which is with a Technology Plus package, that's a really nice thing to have. I don't think it's entirely essential, because this isn't the kind of car that you drive around in at breakneck speed everywhere. It's a lot more important on the M4 version of this, trust me. But on here, it's a nice thing to have. It's very clear. It gives you satellite navigation instructions. It gives you radio options as well, the speed, all the useful information that you need up there. And also this seating position, got to say, been really impressed with it. It is a little bit offset so that your body doesn't quite line up with the pedals. They are a little bit towards the right. But other than that, it's nice and adjustable. Got plenty of adjustment in the wheel. It's manual adjustment here. And the seat allows you to get comfortable, whatever your size or height or anything like that. It should cater for you. One final feature, actually, which I almost forgot to mention, and it is the way that these seatbelts, the seatbelt holder comes out to meet you, so you don't have to quite reach as far around to grasp it and then plug it in. And my mum absolutely adores this feature. It's probably one of her favourite things that she's ever discovered in a car, and it passes the mum test with flying colours, and that's got to be worth something, hasn't it?
Parking Assistant Plus, included in the Technology Plus pack, is also worth a mention, thanks to its ability to pinpoint the extremities of a car that is bigger than ever. The car wash view being exceptionally useful for pesky city width restrictors. What's more, said cameras can double up as built-in dash cams that automatically save the last 20 seconds of the journey if the vehicle is involved in an accident.
Finally, storage space, and honestly it's a lot better in here than it is in some supposedly more practical family cars, because the door pockets are a real highlight. You've got a nice big space for a very large bottle, and there's also a little bit behind that as well, which is very capacious. The glove box is a reasonable size, nothing crazy, but this centre armrest has got a nice area which is easy to put bulky items in down there. You've got a space forwards of the gear lever with the cup holders and then the wireless charging pad. And also my favourite bit, there's a nice kind of felt lined area just down here where you can put odds and ends that will often go missing. So actually for a two-door coupe, it does very well on interior storage. Now, of course, rear seat space in a car like this, it might be a bit of a moot point, but if you do want to put people back here on a reasonably regular basis, then I can say that behind my own driving position, the knee room is good, the foot room is a little bit cramped underneath the seat, and the headroom, of course, it's restricted, but not as much as you'd perhaps expect when you see how sleek and low this car's roofline is. I mean, I've had someone over 6 foot in the back of here on a half-hour journey, and there haven't been that many complaints. They're reasonably comfortable. You wouldn't want to go much further than that, though, I don't think. Also worth noting, 3-zone climate control. It's standard on the 4 Series. That's not an option. What is an option is the USB-C points, dual USB-C points, and that's part of the comfort pack, along with actually the netting on the back of the front seats as well. You could put children back here because there is 2 ISOFIX points, so you could get 2 child seats in the back of the 4 Series. But I think the main issue when it comes to having kids in the back is that it is a bit dark. So the dark headlining, the tinted windows, the also quite high sill, that means they probably won't feel that welcome in here and they won't be able to see that much out of the window. So that could potentially be a bit of an issue. But, you know, given that this is a coupe, it's a sporty coupe, it's actually not too bad. And I almost forgot to mention, you do get a couple of cup holders as well in the armrest. So yeah, as I said, not too bad at all.
As for boot space, the 4 Series delivers 440 litres, which is a touch less than the Audi A5 Coupe, but more than the Mercedes-Benz C-Class Coupe. The space itself is quite shallow, so works best with items that aren't particularly tall. The rear seats do fold down, and I would recommend getting the comfort pack if you want these handy storage compartments and a 12-volt socket in the boot. For many, the 4 Series Coupe will be all the car you'll ever need. However, if you fancy something a bit different from your luxury coupe, then let's take a quick look at its top 3 rivals. Firstly, there's the Audi A5 Coupe. Solid as ever, one of the main differences is that it's primarily front-wheel drive rather than rear-wheel drive like the BMW and Mercedes-Benz C-Class Coupe. Not that you'll notice that in the lower-powered models, of course. Next up, it's the aforementioned C-Class. At the time of filming, it's about to be replaced by a new model, so there could be some very tasty deals out there. Last but not least, the Lexus RC is what you get if you want to be really different and value interior quality and Japanese craftsmanship above all else.
On to the driving section now, and of course that's half the reason you buy a BMW, isn't it? Because it's good to drive. Well, the question is, how does that translate to this, which is basically, well, it is the entry-level 4 Series. It's got the smallest, cheapest engine with the least power, but it also happens to be the best seller, so it is crucial how it drives. So as I said, it's the 420i, which is a 2-litre, 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol with 184 horsepower. It does 0 to 62 miles an hour in 7.5 seconds, and it's got a combined claimed fuel economy of 44 miles per gallon. And actually, over the 5,000 miles I've driven this car across all different driving scenarios, it's done 43.5 real-world fuel economy, which I think is actually very good. Going into the pros and cons with this engine, and we'll start with the cons because there's 2 very distinct ones, and aside from that, it's actually very good. But the first is that it lacks a bit of punch, especially going up hills. It feels like it could do with more torque and just more grunt in general. It sometimes gives the impression that it's not quite powerful enough for this kind of car. To be honest, it actually pulls a clever trick, because when you're driving along at 7/10 or less, it feels like it's got plenty in reserve, but it's only when you put your foot down and you really give it some that you realise actually it's not as quick as you think it might be, or not as quick as you think a car with a 0 to 62 time of 7.5 seconds would be. And that brings me on to the second issue with it, is that when you do put your foot down and you get above, say, 4,000 RPM, it can sound rather thrashy. It's not quite as refined as it should be, and it doesn't fit in with the rest of the car. And actually, that brings me on to the good points about this engine. And weirdly, one of those, or one of the main ones actually, is that when you're driving it around slowly, around town, around the motorway, and you're not stressing it, it is very refined. It's very quiet, and it makes very little fuss at all. It's only when you start to push it that it makes more noise, I'd say, than its rivals. As I said, also, fuel economy, 43.5 miles per gallon across all kinds of driving. That's not just on the motorways. That's very good. I can't remember a petrol car of this size and weight actually giving me that kind of fuel economy. And also the 8-speed gearbox, I'm a big fan of that. It shuffles its changes nicely, it's very smooth, but also on the paddles, it's pretty responsive as well. And if you do really want to get a move on and get the most out of it, you've got the sprint mode on this. You just hold the downshift paddle and it puts you into the lowest setting, and it gives the car its best opportunity to show off the performance, which, as I said, could be a bit more, but that's a useful mode. It's kind of a bit like the sport response button on a Porsche 911, kind of. All things considered though, if it was my money, I really would try, if at all possible, to push the budget and get the 430i, because it's got more power. It's still a petrol, so you don't have to get the diesel, which I think the petrol's better suited to this car because of the silky smoothness in just general driving. But that 430i, it will give you just that little bit more power and performance, which I think this car really needs. Ride comfort on these 19-inch alloy wheels is actually very good, but we do have the M Sport Pro package, which gets you the adaptive dampers on this car. And although I haven't driven a 4 Series without the adaptive dampers, I have been reliably informed that the ride is nowhere near as good without them. So that's a very important extra to get if you can stretch to it. And with them fitted, the ride is exceptional. It's relaxing, it's polished, it's not wallowy, it's just a really good balance, and BMW has nailed this bit of the car. However, when you switch the drive mode selector, you've got lots of different modes. You've got Sport, Comfort, Eco Pro, Adaptive, Auto. When you put it in Sport mode, it tightens up and it becomes more like you'd expect a BMW to be. It's sharp in the corners, body control is very good, it feels agile, the steering's nicely weighted, and it's actually very, very quick as well. It probably takes a bit of getting used to just how quick the steering is. But the strange thing is that even though this is a BMW and it's supposed to be a sporty coupe, after driving it quickly for a bit, I just feel like putting it straight back in comfort and just relaxing again, because this car feels like it just wants to waft everywhere. And I think that's also, again, why you need a bigger engine, because you don't want it to feel like it's been stretched. You want it to feel relaxed and like it's got plenty in reserve. And that fits in better with the character of how this car drives. It's just very relaxed and feels like it would rather not rush, which I wasn't really expecting, I've got to be honest.
The 4 Series' driver assistant tech is also worth highlighting, as although it can be a little overbearing at times, it is very effective. Active lane guidance and active cruise control work well in traffic jams, while blind spot monitoring is also worth having. Just make sure that you don't rely on the speed recognition tech for the cruise control, however, as it can often be wrong.
So, you're looking to buy a BMW 4 Series, but you're not quite sure which one to go for. Well, to help you out, we've chosen our top 3 choices from the current range. So if you want the cheapest one available, then, well, get one like this, except without the options, because this is the BMW 420i in M Sport spec, and it should set you back around £40,000 in cash. And if you want to know how much that is in finance terms, then have a look at the video in the top right-hand corner of the screen now. Next up, if you're a company car driver, you'll want the diesel, so the 420d in M Sport spec with its 28% BIK tax rating. Finally, if you're a performance car fan, then, well, you're in for a treat, because you can get this car as an M4 competition version with 510 horsepower.
After 6 months with the BMW 4 Series, I can honestly say that it is one of the most well-rounded cars I've ever had the pleasure to run. Granted, in 420i spec it might not excite or stir the soul quite like more powerful versions, but it plays the role of a luxury coupe almost perfectly.
You know, if this car was the 430i version or one of the more powerful engines, I think I would be really struggling to fault it, because it has been an exceptional companion over the last few months as an everyday car. And I'll say something else as well, is that although I don't think this is a pretty car or a particularly good looking car, I like the way that it's styled, because we often complain that cars all look the same now, and this one doesn't. BMW's gone out and made something that looks interesting and stands out, and then there's complaints about it. I don't think it's ugly at all. So, in summary, would I recommend this car? Well, you probably already guessed the answer, but yes, definitely, 100%. All I'd say is that if you can go the extra mile, get the 430i, or consider the 420d if it still works for you. But other than that, you're not going to be disappointed. I shall miss it. I shall miss its crushing competence and just all-round goodness.